Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 7, Episode 22 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-24-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk on this Thursday, January 4th, 2024. And I'm looking forward to my guest today. Before we get to my guest, Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, the home of Southern talk in sports, the heartbeat of Atlanta. I hope everyone's doing well today on this January 4th already. For some of you, since I haven't talked to you since last year, Happy New Year. And I'm excited to have my guest on. I haven't had him on my show for about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I met him while I was doing some media work for the Intercounty Baseball League's London Majors a couple years ago. And his name is Dylan Baker. He's the play-by-play voice of the Gold Junior Hockey League's Komoka Kings, and he's also a color commentator for the Intercounty Baseball League's London Majors. His name is Dylan Baker, and we're going to bring on Dylan right now.
Chris, how's it going?
Good afternoon, Dylan. How are you? Good. Happy New Year and Merry belated Christmas.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. Happy holidays to you and all your listeners at home. It's been a while, like you mentioned, since I was last on the show, but quite a new thing. You've got the intro song now, some sponsors, some radio stations. It's awesome. Really happy to see it.
Hey, thank you, Dylan. And I'm doing it the unconventional way. Not the easiest way to do it, but everybody in this industry has been really supportive of what I'm trying to do, and this is something I have a passion for.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I'm glad to see that you're following your passion, and you've progressed a lot. I remember since the last time that I was on your show, it's been probably over a year now since we last spoke publicly on your show, and you've come a long way, both in the way that you are as a broadcaster and in the presentation of the show as well. It's really nice to see.
Well, thank you so much. And during the Christmas holidays, I learned how to do video editing, how to do reels, clips, YouTube shorts. And it's a little bit tedious, but you know what? I think I've got the hang of it as well. And it's just as important, Dylan, you know this as well, to try to learn as much as you can in the media industry. Not that you're going to be the best at everything, but it's good to be a jack of all trades with this industry.
Absolutely, it is. Video editing is such a huge skill to have, and I get what you mean about it being tedious. It's one of my least favorite things to do because it takes so much effort, right? But it's so important to grow, whether it's your content or somebody else's content if you're working for them. So video editing is a huge skill, and knowing how to do a whole bunch of different things, it's such a huge asset for you in the industry.
So congratulations on going to school at the Toronto Metropolitan University. Is this your first year there?
Yes, it is my first year there. Thank you, Chris.
That's awesome. And what's that experience been like so far in sports?
It's been unbelievable. It's been unbelievable. Studying sport media, like you mentioned, I mean, it has been a lot of fun so far. I've encountered some really great people. My classmates, I've got a good relationship with all of them. It's nice because it's a pretty small first year, right? We've only got 83 students, I think, in first year total. So it's really intimate. Everybody gets to know each other. That's been a lot of fun, and some really great professors, even in first semester, right? You don't know a whole lot about what you're getting into in first semester, but a lot of great people that help ease you into it and get a feel of things. And the other thing that I've had the chance to do is broadcast some sports games, right? I've had the chance to do some hockey games, to do basketball, volleyball, all these different things. And that's been a lot of fun to do as well, venturing into a new league that I haven't really explored much in the OUA.
You know what? I do some camera work for the Guelph Griffins, and I have so much respect for men's and women's athletics, especially the women. They have come a long ways, and tonight, ironically, I'll be doing some filming for the volleyball games tonight for the Golf Griffins men and women's hockey teams, and it's just university sports here in Ontario, the OUA. It's really good competition.
It is. Yeah, no, it's really good. There's a pretty fair amount of parity. Every league kind of has their top teams, that's for sure, no matter the sport, no matter whether it's men's or women's, but it's a lot of really good competition through the middle of the ranks there, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I remember my first game that I did was women's volleyball. That was between TMU and the University of Windsor, and I really wasn't sure what to expect. I got into it and I had so
Yes.
much fun. Volleyball, I think, is a tremendously underrated sport. I think that there's a lot of potential there. And I think we've kind of seen the growth in the States. ESPN's covering a lot more college volleyball games and things like that as their seasons progress. But it was a lot of fun to do volleyball. And I think that university sports in Canada in general is kind of an untapped industry because a lot of people don't pay much attention to it, but it's really good.
Yeah, one of my guests last year, her name is Becky Alec. She's like an old pro volleyball player, a middle blocker for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I couldn't believe how just watching her highlights and how competitive it is and how many fans they get it down there in Nebraska. They love their volleyball down there. And I really enjoy it now because at first I thought, oh, okay, I've played it when I was in school, but to watch it in OUA, it's very competitive and I'm really liking the sport.
One of the things that was really telling to me about the growth of volleyball as a sport around North America was the Nebraska game where they played in the football stadium
Yes,
and they came out with that electric opening. The stadium's packed, everybody's fired up. I was like, all right, volleyball is really making getting its footing in the sports industry, at least in colleges, and that's how it'll continue to grow.
absolutely. Hey, since you've been calling some sports for TMU University, have you done any games at the old Maple Leaf Gardens yet?
I have. So I've had the chance to do one hockey game and then one in each of volleyball and basketball. And the hockey, so all their sports take place in that building.
Okay.
The hockey takes place on the third floor, fourth floor if you're broadcasting. And so what they did was, I'm not sure if you know this, Chris. You may have having covered some sports over the past number of years as well. They raised the ice to the third floor of the building and kept the upper bowl seating area. I think they redid the seats because they were getting a little bit old, but they raised the ice to the third floor and they put a basketball and volleyball court on the second floor. So every game that I've done has been in that building, and that's been really, really cool to see because they've preserved the history on the walls, right? You can see all the different moments that have happened throughout time, like the Toronto Huskies playing a basketball game back in 1948. There's pictures and stories on the walls throughout the building telling that. There's all sorts of Maple Leafs history up there as well. So it's a really cool spot, and I'm really fortunate that I've had the chance to do some games there.
Yeah, a lot of history there as well. And the Buffalo Braves, the NBA team that was in Buffalo before they moved to San Diego, became the Clippers. They played a handful of NBA games at Maple Leaf Gardens in the mid 70s as well to see if Toronto was going to eventually be a basketball city, which 20 years later it did in 1995 with the Raptors. And the
I didn't
Raptors
even know
even
Buffalo had a team.
yes, they did. The Buffalo Braves. I
Wow.
had a guest on from Buffalo a couple weeks ago, and they wrote a book about the Buffalo Braves. They were in the NBA from 1970 to 1978, and unfortunately, they didn't have the right ownership at the time, and they ended up moving to San Diego to become the Clippers. And then they ended up being the LA Clippers. So there's a lot of history at Maple Leaf Gardens, not just for the Maple Leafs, but the Huskies, the Raptors, the Buffalo Braves, and then also the WWF used to have cards there too, as well in that arena.
Yeah, there's so much like I've been there only a few times, right, to broadcast these games, but there's so much that I still have to learn about that place because so much has happened there. It was the premier sports venue in Toronto for a number of years, right? There was no Rogers Center, there was no Scotiabank Arena for a long time. So it was Maple Leaf Gardens. Anything that was going to happen in Toronto was going to happen at the Maple Leaf Gardens, and that led to some really cool shows and events taking place there.
Yeah, I went to 3 events there. I went to 2 NHL games and a circus that was there too. And I think one of the games I went to was against the Hartford Whalers in 78, 79, and Gordie Howe. I wasn't old enough at the time to appreciate that, but I just wish I could have had some pictures back then. But yeah, my late father took me back there to see the Whalers and the Islanders, and I saw circus there as well. And even being 7 or 8, 9 years old at the time, I was in awe of Maple Leaf Gardens even back
Yep.
then.
I'm in awe of it now, and it's only the upper bowl that's left, right? Like it's really really cool. It's so well lit, it's so well maintained. I mean, it's an awesome venue.
I'm glad they didn't tear it down because Dylan, nowadays, soon as a team moves out of a stadium or arena, they demolish it for parking
Yep.
or whatever. And I think they did a great job restoring the history of that building, and now look what it's being used for.
I mean, yeah, you've got the PWHL just made its debut in that building on New Year's Day for the first game between Toronto and New York. That was really exciting. You've got university sports that take place there, even local like rec league sports. I didn't realize that at the time when I first started at TMU, but I was broadcasting a basketball game a couple of weeks ago, or I should say probably a month ago now. And I ventured off to look at the hockey rink before the game to see what was going on over there. There was just a youth team practicing on the ice. Like it's used by so many people. It's not just TMU or the PWHL that are using these rinks. These are community rinks as well, and it's awesome for people, for some young fans to use this rink that they may not have any memory of at all or know it existed for the Leafs, but kind of get to experience the history that made that place so special.
Hey, since I have you on, Dylan, what's your thoughts on the PWHL? It seems to be doing good so far and good attendance everywhere.
I'm loving it. I think it's awesome. I am so happy that they've been able to get this league up and running because it's been a long time coming for a professional women's hockey league, and the PWHL seems to really be the perfect blend so far of players' input along with the typical league structure that the NHL has. Right, these players had a lot of input in how this league was going to be created, and I think that's so key because we're in a day now where players' rights and players' beliefs are at the forefront of any successful league. And so they wanted to make sure that they'd be in a spot where they'd be respected, where they could make enough money, and where they could play a game that they wanted to play. A lot of people weren't familiar with the physicality of women's hockey until this league rolled around, because in the first 3 games, there's only been 3 games played, but I've seen so many clips online of the physicality and the hits that are featured in the PWHL because the players said, hey, we want to be able to hit. We want that to be part of our game. And I really like that they've taken so much into consideration from these players as for what they want from this league. And I think it's long overdue that we have a successful professional women's hockey league. And I'm so happy for everybody involved.
There's currently 6 teams involved right now to start
Six
up the
teams,
league.
yeah.
6 teams. I guess that's probably the best way to start it to see how it goes, but eventually maybe they can get it to 10 teams, 12 teams. And I wanted to ask you this too, Dylan, since you're in London, Ontario. Do you feel London in the future could possibly have a PWHL team at Budweiser Gardens?
I think it's a possibility, but I think that they're going to target bigger markets than London.
Okay.
I think that they're going to try to target a lot of these similar NHL style markets. If you were to look at something like the WNBA has really grown in prominence over the last number of years, and they don't do it by going to smaller markets, right? London has a population of 450,000 approximately, and you just don't see that if you want a league to grow the way that I think the PWHL is hoping to. If they do have a team in London, I think that's great for the city of London, but I think the PWHL is going to aim a little bit higher in terms of market size.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping to actually get down to a game there. And I want to see the new Maple Leaf Gardens since they renovated it a few years ago. I want to just come down there and see a game as well. And hopefully I get to run into you down there, Dylan. And speaking of that, when's your next broadcast for TMU?
I'm not sure. I go back a little bit later than most this semester because the semester doesn't start till the 12th, and
Okay.
my first class is until the 15th. So probably the week of the 15th will be my first broadcast back, hopefully, depending on what I get assigned to.
What's that experience been like? And have you had a color analyst with you calling these games?
Yeah, so it's been really cool. Now, TMU is obviously known for its media. It's known as a media school, And so they have a really good program in place with full-on television cameras, full-on television studios to really get students immersed in that experience. It's fully student-run. All the broadcasts are student-run. You have a staff supervisor. Normally, it's Brian Withers, who does just a terrific job and has done a terrific job for a number of years on these TMU broadcasts. And him and his team have really created this unbelievable product where you have students in every single chair: producer, font coordinator, ISO technician, audio technician, and broadcaster, camera operators, replay coordinators. All these roles are filled by students, and it's a lot of fun to see the growth and the performance of these students under pressure a little bit, getting some experience in live broadcasts. And so the way it works for us as broadcasters, the people who want to be on the air, and for a lot of the people who want to be behind the scenes, we fill out a form. We say, hey, we're available this day, this day, this day. And Brian and his team will assign us to different games. So whether that's basketball, hockey, volleyball, those are the three sports that are covered by the Bold Broadcast Group, as they call it, over at TMU. One of those games, one of those sports will be assigned to, and it's a different person every time. So you mentioned you asked if I had a color commentator. I've had 3 different color commentators because I've done 3 different games. I did volleyball, and I did it with a great third-year broadcaster, Curtis Coleman. I did hockey with first-year broadcaster Joshua Alderman, who's from Hamilton, who actually does some Hamilton Cardinals games. Him and I were talking about that. I didn't realize that he was also involved in the IBL. So that was cool. And then my last broadcast, I did it with second-year broadcaster Angela Jagodic. So it's been different people who are all kind of in the same spot as I am and as everybody around us is. We're trying to make it in the industry, and it's been a lot of fun to get to know those people, to hear from different perspectives, and to work with people who come from a lot of different places and hear their stories as well.
How many years is your program?
4 years.
4 years. It'll go by quick. You've already done half a year already.
I know, that's crazy. It's crazy. It was flying by.
What have been some of your most memorable games you've done so far?
Just at TMU or in general?
TMU so far.
Well, I've only done the 3.
Okay.
So I would say the women's volleyball game, which was the first game that I did, was really exciting. That was a really good game. TMU ended up separating themselves from Windsor by the end of it, but for a while it was really close and back and forth. But the men's hockey game as well was really good, because the cool thing about that hockey game was it was TMU versus the University of Ottawa, and those two teams don't face off very often in the regular season. I think it was the first time since 2018 that they had played in the regular season, and every single time that they had faced off since 2015, it ended in a shootout. The first time it was a shootout win for TMU. Then it was a shootout loss for TMU. Ottawa won it in the shootout. And this was the first time that they had met up in the regular season since then. And it was a really tight game because they were kind of feeling each other out. They didn't really know what to expect from the other team. It ended up being 2-0. The second goal was an empty netter. So really 1-0. And it was a really, really good game. And then the basketball game as well was TMU women's team versus Laurier. And that was a bit of a bigger spread in that game because TMU's women's basketball team has been unbelievable this season, undefeated in OUA play. So that one was a little bit more spread out, but every game has been a lot of fun to call.
And TMU used to be Ryerson. Am I correct about that?
Correct, yes.
And it's, to me, even when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, Ryerson, when you thought of Ryerson, you thought of sports broadcasting.
Yep. That's kind of one of the things that it's become known for. And the program has continued to grow and continued to excel over the years.
What's it been like moving? I'm assuming you're living down there right now?
Yes.
So what's that experience been like going from London to Toronto?
It's been different. It's definitely been a different experience living in the big city. It's interesting because sometimes in London's a pretty big city on its own. I mean, you got 450,000 people, as I was mentioning earlier. But in London, you're kind of thinking, okay, I could go out on the street, I could go to the grocery store, and I could see somebody that I know, right? Any given time. In Toronto, I'm just one of 2 million, right? Like just walking around, you are just one small, tiny part of this city where there's so much going on, so much happening, but it's been really cool to see. It's been really cool to get to know everybody in the program in Toronto and to meet a whole bunch of new people. So I've had a lot of fun, but it's definitely been a different experience.
Car or public transportation down there?
Well, it's a bit of a mix, Chris, because I still, as you know, as you've mentioned, broadcast the Komoka Kings every weekend. So I drive down to the London area every weekend to broadcast those games. But when I'm in Toronto, it is exclusively public transit. It is much easier to get around on public transit, and I think that every city should invest more in public transit because the more we can grow that system, the easier it is for people to get around.
Absolutely. And doing the Toronto Argonaut games this summer, I would just drive from Guelph to Burlington, Aldershot, and take the GO train into
Yep.
the exhibition grounds for $5 each way. I couldn't drive to Toronto for $10. Plus, you got to pay for parking down there as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the nice thing
Yeah.
about where the Argos play, where Toronto FC plays, and where the Toronto Marlies play, it is so close to a GO train stop, right? That is perfect. I love that. It's right there for transportation, makes it so much easier for everybody trying to get to the games.
And it gives me time on the train to prepare for doing the games on the train. Well, it's about an hour train ride from Burlington to Toronto, but it's a great time just to get prepared or whatever I need to do before a game as well. And I think it's the best way to go. If I lived in Toronto, I probably would be using public transportation majority of the time.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. And you mentioned it gives you time to prep for coverage of games. Does the same for me, right? I take the GO train and I can prepare for broadcasts or what have you, or I can study for exams if I'm running a little bit behind and I've kind of put it off.
Okay, we're going to get into some questions, Dylan. Can you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself and when did you know earlier in life that you had a passion and a passion for the broadcasting media industry?
So I have been broadcasting for 5 years now. This will be I think this is my fifth season in Komoka, if you include the pandemic year, and it was my fifth season with the majors this season. So I do the play-by-play for the Komoka Kings in the GOJHL. It's a junior B league, just outside of London, Ontario, is where the Komoka Kings play at the beautiful Komoka Wellness Center. And I'm the color commentator for the London Majors, and I've been with both of those teams since 2019, and I've had a lot of fun doing that. And I started broadcasting to an extent, you could call it broadcasting, when I was 12 years old. And I started a podcast with my dad called 211's Baseball Talk. And we were talking about baseball on this podcast. And that was kind of my first foray into broadcasting, because you can ask anybody who has been around me since I was young, and they'll tell you that when I would play baseball or when I would play hockey in the backyard or the basement, what have you, I'd always be broadcasting the game. And I'm sure that's something that everybody's done, but I would always be, he takes a shot, scores, or home run, Dylan Baker, broadcasting myself play these games, those kinds of things, right? And so I've always been passionate about that. I've kind of continued that a little bit as I got older. And the podcast is my first foray into broadcasting. And I actually sent that to the majors as part of my application of sorts to join the team over there. And it's kind of snowballed from that into more opportunities and realizing, hey, maybe this is what I want to do. The other thing that helps that is, I'm not a good baseball player anymore, right? Like I have no aspirations of going on to play professionally at this point in my life. So I've kind of settled into the idea that, hey, I could still potentially make a career out of talking about sports, hopefully, assuming everything goes right, assuming I work hard enough in that industry, because it's something I really love to do.
Well, and I got a taste of the broadcasting bug 4 years ago with Rogers TV and the Guelph Nighthawks, which led to my podcast. And podcast, I wish they had the podcasting back in the '90s. But you know what? It's a great tool to have, and like I said, it's the newest form of radio and the newest form of broadcasting. And I tell people, don't worry about how many people are watching each show. Just try to get good guests or try to have good solo shows, and just keep building yourself up, and eventually
Exactly.
somebody will notice your work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I did with my podcast. That's what everybody who starts a podcast does. I mean, I remember for me, it was a lot of me and my dad at first. We're just kind of talking, and then we got some more guests, and I was able to send some of those episodes over to the majors and apply for a role there, and that kind of just picked up on itself, and everything that has come since has stemmed from that opportunity. And a big thank you to Matt Hiscox and Noah Smith, who gave me that first opportunity with the majors because of the podcast, right? It takes somebody to give you that chance, but until that chance comes, you've got to keep working at it yourself, right? Like you said, keep putting out content, keep making good episodes, keep talking to good people, keep making those connections, because that's the way you're going to advance yourself in the industry.
Absolutely. Hey, and since I got you on here, when you played baseball, you were a catcher. I believe you were a catcher. And what number did you wear? And was there a story behind the number?
That's a really good question, Chris. And that's a question I have actually never gotten in any interview before. Because I play a little all over the place. So I recently I played first base. Those were my last two positions, but I played anywhere. And I would tell my coaches every year, I say, play me anywhere. I'm just happy to play. I wore number 11. So my birthday is December 11th. Now, the crazy thing is my dad's birthday is July 11th and my brother's birthday is April 11th. So we are
Okay.
all on the 11th. And that's why I decided to wear number 11 as my jersey number, because 11 is such a significant number in the family just by chance.
Speaking of number 11, I was able to interview one of the Blue Jays this year that wore number 11 or wears number 11, Bull Bichette down in Buffalo.
That's awesome. That was really cool.
Absolutely. And I told him, hey, that number is legendary because the legendary George Bell wore it. And I don't think Bull know who he was. And then he's like, oh, yeah, the guy on the Jays level of excellence. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
number 11. That's a great number to have. And he's a tremendous ball player as well, to talk to him and his dad, Dante, as well at Salem Field in Buffalo.
Yeah, definitely a really accomplished baseball family, the Bichettes.
Yeah, because when I do my live in-person interviews, Dylan, I always talk to some of these athletes, and I like to ask them about behind the stories. And 90% of them, there is a story behind the number they wear, and I always find it interesting.
Yeah, no, it really gives you a chance to get to know the athlete a little bit more, right? It allows you for a personal anecdote like the one I just gave you, right? I'm not any notable athlete right now or at all,
Yeah.
but you kind of got to hear a little bit more about me and know something that you didn't know before, and share with the audience something that they may not have known, right? Because how many people get the opportunity to ask an athlete about their jersey number? But if you do it, then everybody who listens to Live with CDP or who follows you on social media, they get to hear it as well, and people keep coming back for that stuff.
Well, one of the guys who kind of gave me some good advice, I think 3 years ago, was Eric Smith from the Toronto Raptors and Chuck Swirsky. I don't know how I got him on my show, but they came on. When I started this, Dylan, I scripted everything, and Eric gave me some good advice. Same with Chuck. He's like, write down your points and notes, but talk to your guests like you're at Tim Hortons or at an arena. Natural conversation makes for a better podcast radio show, and I'm very grateful to Eric Smith and Chuck Swirsky for giving me that advice.
Those are two basketball broadcasting legends, those guys. So those are impressive gets to get on the podcast, and really good advice from them. Because if you're natural, the athlete will be natural and open up a little bit more to you, right? If you're all scripted, then they're going to become scripted as well. So good advice from them.
Be yourself. And this, I wanted to ask you this too, Dylan, is did you have a mentor or mentors when you were starting out in broadcasting?
So, yes, I did. I had several. One of my first big guests on my podcast was Scott MacArthur, who at the time worked for Sportsnet 590 The Fan. He was the host of Blue Jays Talk when I interviewed him back in 2019. And Scott has been absolutely terrific to me. I actually just interviewed Scott a few months ago for my podcast in school because I needed to interview a guest. So I reached out to Scott MacArthur, and within minutes, he said yes, because Scott MacArthur has been instrumental for me. But also, Matt Hiscox, Noah Smith with the majors have been really, really good to me. Working with Noah, because Noah, still a young broadcaster himself, when I joined the team, I was 13 years old, and I had never done anything live in my life. But learning from him, allowing him to kind of teach me how to do things, teach me how to act, and Matt also, guided me through what I should be like, how excited I should get, how calm I should stay, those kinds of things. Learning from those two guys about the on-air stuff was really key for me in kind of getting settled a little bit in my first season with the majors.
Were you a little bit nervous your first time?
Oh my gosh, I was terribly nervous. I mean, I had never done anything like it before. I was so excited. I was really, really excited. And I believed in myself. I thought, okay, I can do this. But at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're like, can I do this? Do I think I can actually pull this off? Am I going to do this one game? Because I remember I started with an exhibition game for the majors, an exhibition doubleheader against the Michigan Jetbox. I was like, are they going to have me out for this and say, you know what? We can't bring him back. We cannot do this because he was terrible. I remember I was so nervous, but I think it went pretty well.
they say being nervous is a good part, because if you're not nervous, then obviously it's time for you to get out of a career. That's what I was told doing camera work or even on air stuff. And eventually, the more you do something, Dylan, the more comfortable you'll get. But the one thing you don't want to get, you don't ever want to get complacent doing radio or TV or whatever.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your job is, what your interests are, you never want to get complacent, because it's the passion that keeps you good at your job, right? If you love what you're doing and if you get nervous because you care about your job so much, it's what's going to drive you to get better and better and better and become a better broadcaster, a better teacher, a better, I don't know, a better garbage truck driver, whatever it may be, whatever your job is, whatever interests you, as long as you're passionate about it, you're going to keep getting better.
I know you mentioned Scott McCarthy, but were there some other broadcasters that you really enjoyed when you were younger, Dylan, and that were influenced in your career a little bit?
Yeah, so Dan Schulman has always been one of my favorite broadcasters to listen to. And through Scott MacArthur, when I interviewed him, Scott, who was with the Blue Jays at the time, reached out to Dan Schulman and said, "Hey, there's this kid in London, Ontario, who's got a podcast, and he'd love to interview you." And so Scott reached out to Dan Schulman and got Dan on my podcast, and talking to him was really, really cool, because Dan has been such a figure to look up to over my time, over my youth watching baseball. I mean, he's called some really big moments in Major League Baseball, and he's so good at what he does. So listening to him has been really, really cool, and getting a chance to interview him was awesome. Another guy, Jamie Campbell. Jamie Campbell's been on these Blue Jays broadcasts for so many years, and you always turn on the TV just before the game, and Jamie Campbell's on talking for Blue Jays Central, and Jamie's going through a fight in his personal life right now, and I wish him nothing but the best as he battles cancer. But Jamie has been a great guy to talk to as well. I just met him for the first time. Well, actually, the second time. I met Jamie when I was 6 years old, and he gave me a baseball just outside of the Blue Jays Central Studios at Rogers Center back in 2011 on opening weekend. I remember that. But I met Jamie as a kind of a conscious adult almost for the first time last year to interview him during a Majors game, and that was really, really special, because Jamie, even in that short time talking, one of the nicest guys you'll ever talk to, and provided me with some great advice as well.
I met Jamie as well, and Jamie and me both grew up in Oakville in the late 70s. Jamie was a little bit older than me by 5 years, but I said to Jamie, "Isn't that ironic? We used to go to games at Exhibition Stadium, and now you're a part of the Blue Jays, and I'm trying to get into the radio media industry." But yeah, good guy. He just wouldn't want. He made me take off my one hat, because he goes, "I can't have a picture with fans that don't have Blue Jay hats on." And I said, Jamie, no problem. And I really wish him the best. And I was so happy you got to do a game with him this year at Labatt Park. And Dan, I've had Dan on my show. I was amazed that he came on. And as soon as I talked to him about the Detroit Tigers, Ernie Howell, Paul Carey, the rivalry they had with the Tigers in the 80s, he opened right up. And Jerry Howarth, I reached out to him a couple years ago, and I was shocked when he came on. And Jerry's kept in touch with me since, and he's been very supportive of my work as well.
I haven't had the chance to interview Jerry or talk to him face to face, but one of my good friends, actually, I should mention him as a mentor, Dante DeCaria, who works for the Regina Pats as their play-by-play broadcaster now. He used to work in the IBL, and Dante's been really good to me in giving me some tips, because he had the chance to work under Jerry with the Toronto Blue Jays for one of Jerry's final seasons with the team. And so Dante's been kind enough to pass some of that knowledge down to me in my broadcasting. And he actually did connect me with Jerry. And Jerry gave me some feedback on a demo tape that I sent over to him. And he's been a very kind guy every time that I've had the chance to speak with him.
And to be honest, Dylan, in my 20s, I had the passion for this industry, but I think I would have been too starstruck, because some of these guys I've had on back in my 20s, I would have been like freezing up or nervous. And I just talk to these guys, like I said with you too, Dylan. Every guest that comes on my show, I just talk to them like we're having a regular conversation. And sometimes you mention a subject or something, like I did with Dan or Ken Daniels, they open right up too. That's important as an interviewer too, to do your research on your guests, but also just have national conversation with them.
Make it calm, make it seamless, and they'll open right up. Especially like you said, when you do your research, you find maybe something that these guys used to love as kids, right? If there's a team they're really passionate about, a team or a player as kids, and that's mentioned in an article somewhere, digging up that little tidbit and talking to them about it and getting them to open up about that. I mean, that can be a really great conversation starter. Allows them to settle right in and just makes things easier for you as an interviewer.
Absolutely. And the last 2 years now, since the pandemic's been over, I've been able to do live in-person interviews. Dylan's, as much as I love doing the virtual podcast radio show, there's nothing better than doing a live in-person interview. You have to think on your feet, and you really have to make sure you listen to the guest even more. Not that you don't on here, but you know what I mean with the live interviews.
Absolutely. I mean, it's much tougher, especially if you're in a big venue, right? If you're in a big stadium where there's lots of music blaring or lots of people, you've got to be really attentive to what your guest is saying, because if you get what they said wrong and you ask some question that's completely unrelated, they're going to look at you like, "What are you talking about?" Right? So it's important to very attentively listen to your guests, and it's a lot more fun, I think, to do things in person.
Absolutely. Hey, are you okay, Dylan, for a few more minutes, a few more questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't get to follow the IBL this much this summer because I was doing a lot of the Buffalo Bisons and the Toronto Argonaut games. But what were your thoughts on this 2023 Majors London? Sorry, the 2023 London Majors team that went 17 and 25 after coming off of back-to-back IBL championships.
You know what? I think if you ask anybody around the team, they'll tell you it was a disappointing year, especially like you mentioned after the two championships. But with that said, I think that the pieces will be there for a potential run next year as well. I mean, I think this year's team, they struggled a little bit in terms of pitching, but that's not something that's been a problem for them in years past. If you look at the numbers, Roop Chandradat, Majors GM, has put together a pitching staff that has been in the top three in the IBL in 8 of the last 10 years or something like that. So that's it's a one-off. That's an anomaly. That's not a trend that the majors have. The majors consistently have good pitching. Last year it wasn't there, right? Last year, some guys that you expect to be upper echelon arms weren't quite living up to expectations. And you can expect that to turn back a little bit this season. You can expect some positive regression, I think, coming up into 2024. Because, like I said, I mean, this majors team has had good pitching every single year, 9 of the last 10 years, aside from last season. So if it wasn't for a lack of arms, the majors may have been a little bit more successful. It just felt like every new guy that came in struggled. And they had a really hard time finding their footing with the majors. Maybe it was the new city. Maybe it was the new league. Maybe they were injured or they had something wrong and they couldn't pitch up to their previous performance. But I don't think that's a trend you can expect to keep up.
Do you find they'll have a lot of their core back in 2024, or is it still too early to tell yet?
I think that there will be a good amount of solid players returning. I think there will be a core of guys that majors fans will recognize, but there will be a lot of new faces as well. That I do know for sure. There are guys who are moving on to different things, either in their personal lives or in their baseball lives, and so there's going to be some new faces. But if you're a majors fan, I think get excited about the core that's coming back, because these are the guys that you come to the ballpark. These are the guys that you pay to see, right? The guys that'll be back this season will be the guys that hit the big home runs, the guys who play super hard on the field, the guys who are always there for the fans. And I think that keeping that core, you can have a core of 5 guys like that. You can have a core of 15 guys like that. It's how you build around them, right? And I think that this year, the challenge will be building around what might be a smaller core of returning players, but building them into a successful team again. And I think that Majors manager Roop Chandradat has shown that he can do that in the past. I mean, if you look at the 2021 championship winning team and compare them to 2022, they kept a core of guys, but a lot of the surrounding pieces had changed. And the Majors still built them into a championship winning team in 2022.
Overall, how was the attendance like at Labatt Park in London?
It was lower than the last 2 seasons, but that's to be expected. Everybody's used to a championship, right? I mean, everybody had 2 straight seasons of first place in the IBL baseball and 2 championships. So things started off really well in terms of fan support. And the thing is, fan support in London doesn't waver. I mean, they've got really, really good fans that come back every single game, no matter the results of the team. Some of the surrounding fans, the people who jump on because the team's doing really well, may have not come back last season as much as they had in years past. But London's never going to have an attendance problem because the fans in London are passionate baseball fans. They love their majors, and they know that even if the results aren't necessarily showing, like you mentioned, I think 17-25 was the record last year. They will still field a competitive product on the field. They may come out on the short end of it, but it'll be a good game while you're there to watch.
And this organization has stability, and that's huge nowadays in IBL or whatever sports league, is to have consistent ownership and with management as well.
Absolutely, it is. That's huge. It's a huge part of it. And Roop and Scott have done a great job of stabilizing the majors, and they've been present forces with that team since the early 2000s now, I think. And the work that they've done, the work that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see, that Roop Chandidat and Scott Dart put in is unbelievable. They do a tremendous job with the majors organization, and it's really a first class experience both on and off the field.
You guys are kind of spoiled in London, obviously, with the London Knights, who are competitive every year. The London Lightning, they've won back-to-back NBL titles, and then you've got your Western Mustangs. It doesn't matter what sport; they all seem to do well. So London, it's a really a great sports city, but they're used to winning in their leagues.
Absolutely, they are. I mean, that's an expectation for the city of London. Everybody in London knows what it takes to win. Everybody in London is used to a winner, like you said. Once fans get accustomed to consistent winning, when a team doesn't have that, when a team doesn't show that quite to the same extent, then all of a sudden the fans start to dwindle. And luckily, last season the majors didn't really have that problem. The fans still showed up, but not quite in the same exorbitant numbers that we saw in the championship seasons.
Who are some major players who stood out in 2023, and who are some players who had kind of off seasons? I won't use the word disappointment, but just didn't have as good a season as they did in the past.
You know what? I think a guy that that a lot of majors fans kind of flew under their radar, and we did a broadcasters all star team for the IBL this season, and part of that all star team was every team's broadcasters had to name an unsung hero for their team. And so my player that stood out to me the most that may have gone under the radar is Tommy Reyes Cruz. Tommy Reyes Cruz had a great year. He was our unsung hero for the majors when we did the broadcasters vote. Had a really good season for them. Played all over the diamond. Wherever Roop Chandidat needed him to go, he would play. And he had a really solid year for the team. Now, if we're talking strictly about standout players, no player stood out more than Owen Boone. Owen Boone had an unbelievable season. Owen Boone was... It feels like every year he's gotten better. And, you know, I think he might be over 30 now, but he's still getting better year over year. He's been a tremendous arm for the majors over the past number of seasons. And last year he was electric. I mean, the majors, like I mentioned, had some struggles with pitching, but every single time that Owen Boone took the mound, you knew what you were getting. You knew you were going to get 6 innings of quality ball at minimum. Oftentimes he'd go 7 or 8. He would throw as many pitches as he had in him. He would not make excuses. He would take the ball every inning and he would strike guys out. He'd get outs in different ways. He had a really good fastball last season, as he's been known to have. The breaking stuff was really good. He was a first-team all-star for right-handed pitchers. Well-deserved. Owen Boone was fantastic. And I'll give you a little bit of a different answer for off seasons. I'll give you the pitching staff as an answer, not a player in particular, because the pitching staff was very up and down. There would be games where the pitching staff looked good, and there would be games where the pitching staff really struggled. And there would be moments where maybe Boone starts and gets late into the game, and Roop Chandidat turns to an arm that has been good for him in the past, and all of a sudden they just don't have it that day. So, like I said earlier, not something that you can expect to continue because the majors have not shown that as a problem over a number of years. Year after year, they have good pitching. But this season, the pitching struggled. So I think that's the perfect definition of an off season. It's not what you expect from these arms, but you know that they can get better and they will get better.
The word I'm looking to use for this is consistency.
Yeah.
From both the starters and the bullpen.
Yeah, that's what the majors needed more of. They needed a little bit more consistency because the one guy who epitomized consistency was Owen Boone. but the guys around him would have really good outings and they'd have some tougher outings as well. So I think if the majors can stabilize that, they'll become a more well-rounded team, and the results will be there to show for it. And I have no reason to believe that that won't happen based on the way the majors have played in years past.
Overall, offensively, how did they do in 2023?
They were solid. The majors offense was pretty good. There were some ups and downs for the offense as well. It felt like the games where the pitching was fantastic. Sometimes the offense wouldn't quite be there, but overall, I think that the offense put up good numbers. You'd like to see maybe a bit of a rebound from Cleveland Brownlee. He had a bit of a tougher year last year, but he's a guy who's done it year over year in the Intercounty Baseball League. So you would expect him to kind of find his game once again next season. But overall, I think it was a pretty solid year for the offense. Some guys that you didn't really expect to contribute that did, and then some guys who had off seasons offensively as well. If they can smooth it out, I think at the beginning of the season, the offense was struggling a little bit. And then once they picked it up, the pitching kind of dwindled as well. So it just felt like every time you fix one problem, another one popped up with the majors team last year.
All right, Dylan, that leads to my next question. What are your overall thoughts on the league, the Intercounty Baseball League, heading into 2024? And what's the thoughts on Chatham Kent getting a team? And did they name them the Cubs yet, or have they got a team named yet? No?
So they do have a team name.
Okay.
So I am very excited for the 2024 season. I'm really excited. And a lot of that has to do with Chatham Kent, because I love expansion teams. I love to see how a new market will do in the IBL. I cannot wait to go down to Fergie Jenkins Field in Chatham to watch one of those games, just as a fan, right? Just to experience that, to see what it's like. So they are the Chatham Kent Barnstormers for you and anyone who may not know at home.
Okay.
Their logo, they've got a bus logo, and it's really cool. And they've got some really nice hats as well. So all around good branding for the Chatham Kent team. I'm really excited about the 2024 season because I want to see how a lot of these teams repeat their seasons from last year. Barrie's bringing back a lot of players from their team last season. Barrie, of course, made it to the finals and lost out to Welland in 6 games. And yes, the final game, I think, of the season ended at something like 17-1 for Welland, but that was not an indication of how that series went at all. It was really hard fought. Barrie took the first 2 games. Welland won the next 4 in the finals, but Barrie's bringing a lot of guys back. How does Welland follow up on that season? I mean, Welland really hadn't had that much success, that level of success, I should say, because they've been a successful team, but they hadn't quite reached that level in years past. How do they look to replicate that this season? What are they going to do to try to repeat as champions? Is Kitchener going to continue to be a really good team again? Because if you'll recall, in the late 2010s, 2015 to 2019, Kitchener was a powerhouse, right? But coming out of the pandemic, they struggled to find their footing a little bit. So can Kitchener get back to a level where they're around the top of the IBL standings? What does a majors bounce back look like? Will the majors be able to get back into that upper echelon of teams? And I would think that they can. And the biggest question of all, what does Chatham look like? What's Chatham going to be like as an IBL team, right? Because the Chatham Kent Barnstormers have had tremendous fan support so far in their name unveiling, in all of their sponsorship events, and all the different things that they've done. They had some hats go on sale. They sold out pretty much immediately. I mean, people love sports in Chatham Kent. And Chris, I don't know how familiar you are with the Chatham Kent area, but working with the Komoka Kings in the GOJHL, there's a team in Chatham, and that team has among the rowdiest, most passionate fans in the league. They love their sports in Chatham, and I see no reason that that won't be the case for the Barnstormers, who are upgrading Fergie Jenkins Field in Chatham as well. There's going to be a new grandstand on both sides for fans to enjoy at Fergie Jenkins Field. I think this is a really exciting year for the IBL. I think it's a year where the league is going to continue to expand, continue to grow in terms of market share and its footing within its cities. Hamilton had a really great year last year off the field. The new ownership, new staff did a tremendous job getting the community more involved, getting fans more interested. So 2024, I think, should be a really good year for the Intercounty Baseball League.
And Welland's hosting the 2024 All-Star Game too, as well.
Yes, they are. That'll be the first All-Star game in quite a while for the IBL. I think since 2015 they haven't had one. That one was in Barrie. And if you know one thing about the Welland Jackfish, it is they are going to get creative. and I am eager to see what Ryan Harrison, Jason McKay, Adam Harrison, that Welland Jackfish front office can pull off for this All-Star showcase. By all accounts, from what I've heard, and this has not been from the Jackfish organization themselves, so don't take my word for it, be prepared for anything. And my little personal expectation is be ready for something along the lines of the Savannah Bananas for that game, because they have a game where they can do it up, where they can make it super special for the fans in attendance and at home watching. And this will be the first game, I think, that is streamed live, first All-Star game that is streamed live, because I think back in 2015, they did not have that game broadcast. I might be mistaken on that, but I think it's a really great opportunity, and Welland is going to make a show of it, I'm sure.
Do you see more expansion in the future? And are there some cities that you would like to possibly see get opportunities, like maybe possibly Windsor?
Yes and yes. I'd like to. I think expansion is on the horizon for the IBL. I had heard a few years ago that they were trying to bring in two teams at the same time, or two teams a year apart. So the one of those teams that I kept hearing was Chatham, and the other one, and the reason that that hasn't happened yet is because the other one was kind of undecided. They were trying to figure out what 10th market they could bring into the league. So that's not happening. The two teams in 2 years is not happening. That's just, let's make that clear. But I do think that the IBL is going to look at expanding. And I would like to see personally, maybe a team in Oshawa or a team in Stratford, some of these markets that they have previously been in that have
Stratford.
shown that they could have some success. Because to do is they want to get to 10 teams, and then they want to split the league down the middle and have an East division and a West division. And all the teams would play each other, but you'd play your division more frequently than you'd play the other division. So I think that eventually that's where the league is going to be headed. It's going to be an East division and it's going to be a West division. So I think that the perfect scenario for the IBL would be another team in the East division, whether that's Oshawa or maybe a team like Stratford that's kind of in the middle that would be in the West division, but you can put one of those on the fringe teams that are kind of in the middle over to the East division, maybe like a Hamilton. You'd put them in the East division there, or a Kitchener maybe in the East division of the IBL. But I think that is where the Intercounty Baseball League is headed. You mentioned Windsor, and I think Windsor would be a great city for an IBL team, but the problem is travel. For a team like Barrie or a team like Welland, that's a long bus ride, especially if Windsor's playing on a Friday night. So you'd have to figure out a way that works where that team would be playing something like maybe what they did with Ottawa back in the day. Back when there was a team in Ottawa, the Fat Cats in the early 2010s, they would play double headers on the weekends. And maybe that's something that would have to happen with those teams like Barrie and Welland coming to Windsor, if that's a market the IBL sees value in. But I do think Windsor would be a good spot for an IBL team. I think it's a city that could support an IBL team. The only problem I see with Windsor is the travel, and can other teams make that work? Because of course it is a working man's league. All these guys have jobs, right? It's not like the OHL where these kids are dedicated to hockey. So the Barrie Colts can come to Windsor and play the Spitfires because those guys are fully oriented on hockey, and the school kind of takes a bit of a backseat. Obviously, they still value their education, but they're going to find a way to make it work. A lot of these guys can't do that with their respective jobs, and that's why I see Windsor as a bit of a tougher market for the IBL to exploit.
Last question about the IBL. The Toronto Maple Leafs, do you know who their new owners are?
I do. I believe it is Rod Black from TSN, and Rob Godfrey, I believe, is the other owner. It's a big group. It's a big group that bought the Maple Leafs. I think it was for near $1 million. They purchased the team, but there are different people who have come to the forefront. And I apologize to Mr. Godfrey. I know it's a Godfrey, and I think it's Paul Godfrey's son. Paul Godfrey used to be involved with the Blue Jays.
Yes.
But there's a big group who has purchased the team. Rod Black is involved, and I know that I believe it's Rob Godfrey who is one of the owners as well. But like I said, big group, and part of that agreement was to keep them out of Christie Pitts, or keep them in Christie Pitts, or I should say, keep them playing out of Christie Pitts, because there is so much history there for that team, and so that's something that they're going to look to continue doing over the next few years.
One of the most model franchises of the IBL, even since I was growing up back in the 70s.
It's been really impressive what they've been able to do. I mean, the fact that they've been able to survive for as long as they have, playing out of a park that doesn't charge any attendance fees, that anybody can just walk into and enjoy a ball game. I mean, that takes dedication, and that's why I think that it's good that they have such a big group of owners coming in now, because they need people who are going to be working the phones, who are going to be saying, "Hey, can you sponsor the IBL Maple Leafs? They're not the big Maple Leafs; they're the IBL Maple Leafs, and we need your sponsorship to keep community run baseball in the city," right? Finding the right spots to target for some sponsorship money, figuring out what key partnerships are available and necessary for the Maple Leafs to function as an organization. So, you know what? They're going to need a dedicated group of owners, and I think they've got that.
Okay. Now, Dylan, we'll switch to hockey before we wrap this up. How did you end up becoming the play-by-play announcer for the Go Junior Hockey League's Komoka Kings, and what's that experience been like so far?
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun working with the Kings. So that all started in 2019, like I mentioned earlier on in the podcast. Roop Chanadad is the co-owner, general manager, and field manager for the London Majors, and one of the things he also does is he's the owner, president, and general manager of the Komoka Kings. So after the 2019 Majors season, I reached out to Roop and said thank you for a great first year, and he said no problem. Would you like to come out and do hockey? So Roop obviously had heard me on the broadcasts for the majors that year, and Roop and I have known each other for a long time because I used to play baseball against Roop's son Jagan, and Roop would coach that team. So Roop and I we had met before, we had played against each other on the baseball field before. Roop kind of knew me, and I did that first season with the majors. He offered me the job with the Komoka Kings, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, the experience in Komoka, I can't speak highly enough of the way that organization is run. The Komoka Kings take care of everybody in the organization. They make sure that everybody is in a good spot off the ice, and they try to put a competitive team on the ice. But there are some teams, in the league who struggle to maybe pay their league fees, or who struggle to get things done at a league and administrative level. The Komoka Kings are really the model franchise when it comes to that kind of stuff, because everything is done on time. They're a really good organization to work for, and I'm very happy that I've had the chance to work with them for a number of seasons.
How much of an adjustment was it going from calling baseball to hockey? Obviously, hockey is a faster sport than baseball is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a big adjustment. It's an adjustment that I really enjoy, though. I really like doing hockey because it's so much more fast paced, and it offers something completely different for baseball. From baseball, I should say, because in baseball you have a relatively slow game, and then all of a sudden, bang! There's a rush of adrenaline, a big home run gets hit, a great play gets hit. Whereas hockey, it's go 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 go, and you've got to figure out how to tell that story properly, right? How to tell all the action in the best way to make it palatable for the people at home. And so it's a really big change. It's a much faster paced sport. The terminology is obviously a little bit different, and there's less time for breaks and pauses, but it poses its own challenge. And I think that's part of the reason that it's so much fun to broadcast.
This leads to my next question, Dylan. Thoughts on the first half of the season for the Komoka Kings? And I guess they've been struggling so far, 3-28 after 31 games so far.
Yeah, it was a tough first half, and this is, of course, the unofficial first half mark of the season, the holiday break, as it is for any league. It's been a rough year, and I think that you can ask anybody in the organization; they'll tell you the same thing. What the Kings have this season is they've got a young team. They've got a team that, for a lot of them, they weren't playing together last year, or they weren't facing this level of competition last year, right? Because it's a big adjustment for these young players. The Kings have a lot of 17-year-old players in the team. And for those 17-year-old players coming in and playing against a league with guys that are ranging from 16 to 21, that's a big adjustment, right? That's a huge adjustment to make. There are men in this league. It's not just you're playing against boys your age. These are men. These are grown men in the league who are very physical, and I think that the team has struggled a little bit to find its footing. And I think that they're primed to bounce back. I mean, I think that my hope for the team is after the holiday break, they've kind of had a chance to gel a little bit, get to know the systems that they're playing, because not only do they have a young team coming into this season, they also had a completely new coaching staff coming into this season. So the coaching staff trying to get their systems in place, the young guys trying to figure things out in the league. I'm hoping that the second half will be a little bit more successful for the Kings, and they made a big trade in December, trading away their captain and assistant captain Adam Zuckerman and Judd Katz, and sent them to St. Thomas for 3 younger players. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see from the Kings here. They're going to try to build on these young guys and eventually have a young nucleus that can be successful next year and the years after. But for now, it's definitely been a tough year so far.
How hard is it being a broadcaster doing a team that's having the struggles and making sure you keep focused on these broadcasts as well?
You know what? I think for me, I've probably got the easiest job in the building. I mean, I love hockey, I love broadcasting, and I love the Kings organization. I mean, the organization's been nothing but great to me, from the top down, from the front office, the coaches, the players. I go out there and I love it, no matter whether they win a big game, whether they lose. I'm happy to be there, and I'm having a great time. So for me, I don't find it that big of a challenge, just because I love the sport, I love the team, and I love to broadcast hockey. And every time you kind of go into it with that optimism that they're going to be able to win, because I really do feel like the Komoka Kings their record does not reflect their play. I think that they're a much better team than a 3-28 record. And I think if you ask anybody around that team, they'll tell you the same thing. They've been able to keep it close in some games against some really tough teams. Like I just feel they're on the cusp of turning a corner here. And so you kind of go into it with the hope, like, hey, this could be the game that they do it. And you go into that hope whether the team is 28-3 or 3-28.
So a lot of their games have been competitive. It's sort of like the Detroit Pistons. I'm a Pistons fan. They're 3-31.
For your CDP.
But I do think the Pistons are better than 3-31 with their talent. They have a young team, and they just don't know how to close out games, because in most games they're in it for 3.5, even the whole game until overtime. They just have to find a way of winning at the end. And sometimes young teams have to take their lumps before they can become winners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing in Komoka right now. But even though they're young, I firmly believe that the talent is there. Like there are players on that roster who are very talented and who will go on to be successful hockey players for a successful Komoka Kings team. It's just this season so far has been a bit of a struggle to find that footing and consistency.
For those people that are watching this live stream or listening on audio or my radio station that have never been to a Go Junior Hockey League game yet and a Komoka Kings game, who are some players for fans to watch out for this Kings team going into the second half of the season and in the future going into next year as well?
Well, I'll give you 2 names that are really interesting because they've both got Ontario Hockey League ties. Zach Hubin, who is a forward for the Kings, who's a draft pick of the Ottawa 67s. He actually made his OHL debut earlier this week. Zach is a big 16-year-old forward. He is 6'5" at 16 years old. He's huge. He's a huge kid. I know. And he's physical. He's got a great shot, and he's going to be a really good player. I think he'll be in the OHL in a couple of years' time at most, assuming he continues to progress in his hockey development. And I felt bad for Zach because in game 2 of the season, the Kings home opener, he took a hit from behind that, was probably a little bit on the dirtier side, and he broke his thumb. And so he was sidelined for a couple of months because of that. But he's a really talented player. He's continuing to take steps in his development with the Kings, and they're continuing to develop a player like him. And I think he'll be in the OHL sooner rather than later. He's already played a couple of games this week for the Ottawa 67s. Another guy, goaltender Matthew Kaprowski. He's another 16-year-old. He was drafted by the Owen Sound Attack in the OHL draft. He's been a real solidifying force, a calming presence in the net for the Kings this season. He's made some big stops. He's had to face a barrage of shots some nights. Some nights he has the easiest night. of anybody on the ice, and he's been really, really good for the Komoka Kings. So he's another guy to look forward to. I'll just add one more name as well. Owen Van de Ven, who they acquired in the trade where they sent Adam Zuckerman and Judd Cass to St. Thomas. Owen Van de Ven, a draft pick of the Peterborough Petes. He is 17 years old. He's got, I think, 21 points in 29 games this season as a defenseman. So he's been very impressive this year, and I'm really excited to get a look at him in Komoka for a little bit longer because he's only played 3 games with the Kings since coming over.
Before I show the video clip of your reel, which I appreciate you doing, when is your next broadcast for the Komoka Kings?
So we are back in Komoka. Kings are back in action tomorrow in St. Mary's, and then I will be on the air on Saturday when the St. Mary's Lincolns come to Komoka. So it's a home and home for Komoka and St. Mary's. So that should be a fun one. Friday and Saturday. So you can catch me on Flow Hockey on Saturday. One more thing, little shameless plug for the Kings.
Go ahead.
Former Komoka King, Kings alumni Easton Cowan was on Canada's World Junior roster at the World Junior Hockey Championships this week. First player since the Kings moved to Komoka to have been a Komoka King and also make it to the World Juniors. Cowan, of course, a first-round draft pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I had a chance to do an interview with him last year just before the draft, and really good guy, really great family. And he enjoyed his time in Komoka. He gave a couple of shout outs to the Kings and some Hockey Canada content over the World Juniors. Obviously, Team Canada fell a little bit short of the ultimate goal, but Easton Cowan, a former Komoka King, one of the great successful development stories the Kings have to go along with a guy like Ryan McAllister, who's in the AHL for the Florida Panthers right now. He was a former Komoka King. Dario Beljo is going off to the college ranks in the United States. So the Kings have been able to develop some really talented players, and just wanted to give a shout out to some of those guys as they continue their hockey careers.
And I have the Komoka Kings website here as well. Kings.GOJHL hockeytech.com as well. That's the best place to get tickets from off the website?
Tickets are only available at the door, actually, and the GOJHL is still trying to roll out the online ticket software.
Okay.
So you can see all the ticket prices online, but if you want tickets, come to the door.
And what's the most exciting part of going to a GOJHL game?
There's a lot of really exciting stuff, and it all kind of depends on the building you're in. But the fact that there are so many young guys who are trying to make it in hockey, right? You look at these teams, the Kings, I mentioned a few of their OHL draft picks. A lot of teams have OHL guys who are picks of, the Atlanta Knights or the Guelph Storm or whoever it may be. I know the Kings played the Air Centennials the other day, and Air is the affiliate team for the Guelph Storm. There's a lot of Guelph Storm picks on that roster, and the Kings have their fair share of OHL guys. All the teams do. So seeing these guys kind of before they reach the OHL and continue to move on in their hockey careers and move up in the hockey ranks. I mean, a guy like Easton Cowan, he played in Komoka in the 2021-2022 season. And if you were able to make it out to a Kings game, you would have seen Easton Cowan before he became Easton Cowan, kind of thing, right? So you see these guys who are really working hard because they want to go on to play hockey at a higher level, whether that's the OHL, whether that's in the NCAA, whether that's in university hockey here in Canada. Whatever it may be, these guys are pushing for something. They're trying to get somewhere. And I think it's really exciting and good hockey. I've had plenty of family members come out to Kings games, and every time they come back and they send me a message like, that was a really good game. I'm like, yeah, this is really good hockey in the GOJHL. And I think that it's a league that doesn't sometimes get the respect that it deserves. I think it deserves to be known as a pretty good development league. And I think the GOJHL is going to continue to grow, and it's a great time if you ever got the chance to come and see them.
Okay, before we wrap this up, Dylan, I'm gonna try to make it out to a game this year, and if I can come out to Komoka, I will definitely let you know, because I would like to check this league out. It sounds like it's a feeder league for the Ontario Hockey League as well.
It is. There's lots of guys. I mean, you look at Noah's team, my broadcast partner with the majors, Noah Smith, his Strathroy Rockets. Last night, they had 3 or 4 guys in the London Knights lineup. The Kings have had Caden Johnston, who's a former Komoka King, who's in the London Knights lineup right now. Isaiah George signed in Komoka. He's the London Knight, New York Islanders draft pick. I mean, there are guys from the Komoka Kings from all these different teams in the GOJHL that are in different markets around the Ontario Hockey League. So it's a really good spot to develop kids. And there's a reason that these OHL teams trust the GOJHL to do it. It's a great development league.
Okay, definitely. And before we wrap this up, I'm just going to show my audience a little clip of your reel that you sent me, Dylan. And thank you so much for doing this, because I do this with all my guests. I like to show off their work to my audience.
Thanks for showing it off, Chris.
Just let me know if you can hear the audio.
Again, pinching from the blue line, Aaron Hyman. Hyman gets tied up. Mark Hauser around the wall. In there is Bowie. Bowie, good recovery, goes up to Wells. Wells has an open man. He likes to take the shot himself. That one just wide. Rebound, Martin in front. Here's a shot, scores! Daniel Grigorev stays hot, and the Bold take a 1-0 lead with just under 6 minutes left in the second period.
Grigorev just continues to add to his
by Wells. Verow first man on it, though, on the forecheck. Drops it back towards Seguin. Back to Verow. Here's a pass in the slot. Save there. Rebound try. Edmonds got across and kept it out. Right, now it'll be played by the Lancers. The libero gets it back to the front. Here's an attack attempt. Played by Gingerra. Now up for Zonnevel. Back for Gingerra. The attack and the kill. TMU extends the lead to 10. It's 15. What Lucas Hodgson elects to do. Veltman up to the line to serve yet again. Admins the receive. It'll go up to Wolk now on the far side. Sealy an attack. Tipped there by TMU. Veltman. Zonneveld. Veltman the attack and the kill.
Well, you can see how much more comfortable they are with their two tallest players on the front row right now.
Full count, 2 out. Pitch on its way from Green. A breaking ball that DeOlio sends in the air to right field. Going back on it to Santos at the track. And that ball is out of here. Eduardo DeOlio muscles one to the opposite field. It's the Majors' second home run of the inning, and this one extends the lead. It's 6-1 London. Here's the offering. Breaking ball, Riley drives it to left field and deep. Back goes Ruiz, warning track, leaping up. Did he catch it? He did! Humberto Ruiz with the catch of the year! What a play to end the 7th inning! Oh my!
You have got to be kidding me.
Saving runs for the Majors. What a play by Humberto. Yves Lepena.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dylan, for sending me a clip of your reel. Did you do that reel yourself?
I did, yes. I actually threw it together last night when you sent me the email, Chris, asking for some clips. I have some demos, and I encourage everybody to make a demo of their work to send to different places that they're applying to. I do have a demo showing off individual sports, but I tried to get you a shorter one that combines a whole bunch of everything for you last night.
That's great. And I'm going to have to send you a message in the future, because I had somebody do a demo for me a couple years ago, but I think I'd like to try to do it myself. So I'm going to write you and see if you can give me some advice on that, because I need to do an updated demo, because the last one I did was from 2 years ago.
Sounds good. Let me know, and I'd be happy to help you out.
Thanks, Dylan. We're going to wrap this up. What are some fun facts about Dylan Baker, and where can my audience follow or find you on social media, or if you have a website as well?
Chris, I think I got to be the most boring guy you will ever meet. I don't have very many fun facts about me. I love sports. I love broadcasting. I speak French. There's a fact. I speak French. I'm fluent in French. I broadcast. I used to do sports broadcasts in French in high school. I did soccer, basketball, and volleyball. So I suppose that's a fun fact about me. I speak French. I love sports. I've got a few dogs at home. So there's some fun facts about Dylan Baker, but that's just about all I can muster. You can find me on social media at dbakes11, spelled as it sounds, DBAKES11, on Twitter and Instagram. You can find my YouTube channel, Dylan Baker. I don't post on my YouTube channel very often, but you will see some previous interviews that I've done and some of my work over there as well. So thanks for having me on, Chris.
Well, Dylan, hey, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Continued success in your schooling at TMU, and continued success in your broadcasting crew. And I will get down to a Kings game this year. And I definitely want to see you and Noah again at Labatt Park, because I want to do another live interview with you guys as well. And that ballpark is one of the most beautiful ballparks in North America.
Absolutely, it is. Thanks again for having me on, Chris. It's been awesome to watch you continue your success with the podcast and all the different ways that you're getting into the sports media industry. Keep up the good work. It's a lot of fun to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, Dylan, thank you so much. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Thanks, Dylan. You too. That was Dylan Baker, the play-by-play voice for the GOJHL's Komoka Kings and color commentary for the IBL London Majors. Dylan is only 18 years old, but he's a first-year student at Toronto Metropolitan University, or known as TMU, and he has a bright future in the broadcasting business. And besides being a colleague, Dylan, I consider a friend as well, and I really appreciate you, Dylan, coming on today. And try to get out to a Go Junior, what is it? GOJHL game. It's a feeder league for the Ontario Hockey League, and I'm going to try to get up to Komoka this year to see the Kings game as well. And before we wrap it up, guys, I want to give my friend Nino a plug. The DeMarco Crew movie is set for release this year, and it features a great cast, including my friend Chris Spinelli from Fatal Justice, Louis DeSanto from Backfire, Nicole D'Angelo from Love Crime, and Shane Ryan Reed from Another Way to Die. Just a few of the stars on this movie. Please be on the lookout for the DeMarco Crew movie on most major live streaming services such as Amazon Prime and Netflix and Tubi, etc. as well. And a shout out to my friend Nino Chimino. He is an actor, writer, and producer, so look for that movie to come out soon on live streaming platforms, DeMarco Crew as well. My next Live with CDP Sports Talk will be next week. Guests to be announced. I am working on more guests as well. I will probably make an announcement this weekend. I will be back doing some media work for the Buffalo Bandits of the National Lacrosse League this Saturday, January 6th at 7:30 at the KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York, when it's a National Lacrosse League Finals rematch of the past 2 years of Colorado Mammoths against the Buffalo Bandits. These teams have won the championships, Colorado in 22, Buffalo in 2023. Both teams this year are off to a slow start at 1-2, so this is a huge game. And if you can't get down to the KeyBank Center, bandits.com, you can watch the game on CW23 or listen to it on the Bet 15:20 a.m. in Buffalo with John Gerkler and Steve Bermel, along with Dave Buchanan. I've had John and Steve on my show a number of times, and hopefully I'll have Dave Buchanan on my show as well. National Lacrosse League is a great league, guys. Check that out. It's a combination of hockey and basketball as well. So check out my social media this weekend for pictures, videos, and some pre and post game interviews as well. And I've got a comment here. Let's see the comment. Evan Gu from Kitchener. Hey, Chris Palma. Hey, Evan, how are you? Thank you, Evan, for watching my show. Evan is from Kitchener, Ontario. He's a huge sports fan, and he loves his Kitchener Rangers, who are one of the best teams in the Ontario Hockey League this year as well. So thank you, Evans, for watching Live with CDP Sports Talk. And we're going to wrap up our show shortly. Just give me a minute or two. Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Palme. It is always on weeknights at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. And our radio station's website is WQEEFM.radio12345.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Live with CDP Sports Talk is now available live streamed on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram, Chris Palme, and you can watch my show there as well. And a special thank you to Steve StreamYard for getting Instagram available for live streaming as well. You can check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. All my digital media work and content is on that site, and you can find all my social media sites there as well. So again, beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership here in Guelph at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Did you know Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership in Guelph is the number one electric dealer in Ontario. So if you're thinking of a hybrid or an all-electric vehicle, check out barrycullen.com as well. And speaking of Barry Cullen Chevrolet right now, there's a winter tire clearance going on at Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Time to save 13% on winter tires up until February 29th. Don't pay tax on select in stock winter tires. Ride out the rest of winter season with a peace of mind. Again, more information at barrycullen.com. You can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I post all my reels of my shows on there, as well as player and coaches interviews and my media work there on TikTok. So again, hit the follow notification and to Live with CDP on TikTok. I am very active there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting or just live streaming in general, check out StreamYard. I'm now an affiliate with StreamYard, so if you have any questions about it, please DM me or email me at cpalme19@gmail.com. For me, StreamYard has been great for my podcast show for the last 3 years. I highly recommend it. They do have basic plans that are free, and then they have professional plans as well. So again, check out StreamYard.com or send me a DM here or an email at cpalme19@gmail.com, as I'm an affiliate now with StreamYard. Great customer service, great product as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, and Tuned In. And again, weeknights at 8 o'clock on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM. You can also email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpalme19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188. That's 519-820-7188. Any comments, questions, suggestions, any kind of feedback would be greatly appreciated as well. And I am working on for more shows next week as well. And I'm looking forward to this weekend. Like I said, we have a lot of NFL action going on. You got a big Sunday night game between the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins. Buffalo loses this game, they could be out of the playoffs. If Buffalo wins, they'll win the AFC East for the 4th straight year and get the number 2 seed. So that's a huge game on Sunday Night Football. And then Saturday football, we have Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh needs a win to get in. Baltimore has already clinched the number 1 seed. And then Houston and Indianapolis on Saturday night. Both those teams are trying to get into the playoffs as well, so I'm looking forward to that. Philadelphia Eagles, who have lost 4 out of 5 games now 11-5, are taking on the NFC East rivals, the New York Giants, this Sunday at MetLife Stadium, 4:25. The Eagles, for them to win the NFC East, need to beat the Giants, and they need the Washington Commanders to beat the Dallas Cowboys. But Philly most likely will end up in the number 5 seed and having to play their first game in the playoffs in the wild card round on the road, unfortunately, after their 35-31 loss to the Cardinals. And Monday night, 8 o'clock, the National Football Championship for college football. The Washington Huskies, 14-0 against the Michigan Wolverines, 14-0. Michigan's coming off a big 27-20 win over Alabama in overtime. Washington's coming off a big 37-31 win over Texas. Michigan is favored by 4.5 points in this game as well. Some Detroit Piston news. The Pistons are now back on another losing streak. They lost their 2nd straight after ending their 28-game losing streak on Saturday against the Toronto Raptors. The Pistons were competitive last night. They lost in overtime to Utah, 154-148. So you know what? With this young Pistons team, I don't expect them to win a lot of games this year, but be competitive. And last night's game against Utah, they nearly beat Utah on the road. And Utah is a hard place to win games at, but 154-148. And the Detroit Red Wings coming off a win the other night, 5-3 over San Jose. The Wings play tonight at 10 o'clock in Los Angeles against Drew Doughty and the LA Kings as well. And NHL action tonight, Buffalo at Montreal, Pittsburgh at Boston, Columbus at Philadelphia, and I mentioned before Detroit at LA as well. Again, I want to say thank you to my guest today, Dylan Baker, for giving me over an hour of his time coming on live with CDP Sports Talk for my 352nd episode. And again, for those who are just watching, and that weren't on my show last night, Happy New Year here in 2024. And I'm working on more guests for next week. I just have to confirm dates and times. People don't realize when you're a solo guy doing this show, which I love doing, I am passionate about, booking guests is probably the hardest aspect, matching my schedules up with my guests and that. But I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter/X, and on Instagram and all my audio platforms as well. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, great weekend. And again, I'm looking forward to the Buffalo Bandits game Saturday night, 7:30 against the Colorado Mammoths. Game is on ESPN Plus, TSM Plus, or CW23 in Buffalo, or 1520 The Bet as well. And check out my social media pages for pictures, videos, and interviews with the Buffalo Bandits. And I will make an announcement this week on my shows coming up next week as well. So hope everybody has a great afternoon, great weekend, and we'll see you back here next week for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk. Brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph, and weeknights at 8 on WQEE 99.1 FM. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and go Birds and go Blue.